Good evening, everyone. This is Keith David, and you're listening to Without Your Head.
Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. This is Nasty Neal, and I'm joined by Scott Conroy, creator and writer of the audio drama Blackout, which every episode comes out Tuesday. For people not aware of a Blackout, can you give them an idea of what it's about?
Sure, yeah. Blackout is about a blackout, believe it or not. It takes place in a small town in New Hampshire, and it sort of explores what might happen if the power grid were to suddenly go out through the context of a small town and one man in particular who is played by Rami Malek and is a radio DJ in our series, and sort of explores how he fights back against some of the nefarious and hard to pin down powers that be that caused the blackout in the first place.
So where did the idea come from to do an audio drama as a podcast? Because I'm a fan of like old school radio plays, like from the 30s and stuff, and audiobooks. It's kind of a combination of the two.
Well, I mean, I think there's something interesting about the idea of putting the listener in the same position as the characters who are experiencing the blackout in a way, because, you know, they can't see what's going on around them in theory. And so, you know, you really have to paint a picture through the use of sound. So that's what we tried to do in creating this series and making it compelling and suspenseful by allowing the listener to sort of visualize for themselves what's going on around them.
Mm-hmm. So why did you pick Berlin, New Hampshire? I've actually been there. So when I found out it was a place I've been to, it was very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was a political time covering presidential politics mainly, so spent a lot of time in New Hampshire and traveled all over the state. Actually wrote a book about the New Hampshire primary as well. And I just think the North Country is particularly fascinating for a lot of reasons, and Berlin in particular, you know, it's kind of emblematic of a lot of small towns in America that, you know, really had, you know, a once vibrant economy. In the case of Berlin, through the old paper mill that was in operation there for many years and decades, that has recently shut down. And kind of, you know, using that as a microcosm for some of the challenges that America faces on the whole, and many of these swaths of the country that have largely been forgotten, I think. It seems like an interesting time to look at those places.
Mm-hmm. What stands out to me about when I was in Berlin is they have open carry, so it's very unusual for me to walk around at like a 7-Eleven or whatever, and people have, you know, like pistols just like right out in the open. Yeah,
that's not unusual to see actually in all parts of New Hampshire. It's a very, you know, it's a very permissive state when it comes to gun control. It's interesting because the state has really moved largely to the left over the last, you know, 10, 15 years or so politically, but by the same token, there's still that, you know, live free or die kind of libertarian leaning ethos. So yes, it is very pro-gun, especially up north. You know, you have a lot of hunters and a lot of people who do carry out in the open.
Mm-hmm. So how did Rami Malek get involved as both as role of Simon and executive producer?
Yeah, you know, I basically, well, the genesis of the podcast came from you know, a conversation that I had originally with my former agent who left to start his own podcasting company, which is Q Code, which is producing Blackout. His name is Rob Herding. And, you know, Rob has known Rami's manager for some time and knew that Rami had expressed interest in doing a podcast at some point. And so basically I met with Rami and pitched him on my idea and asked him, you know, what his interest might be and what his input was on the concept. And he was really interested in it right away. He sort of got it right off the bat, and it seemed compelling to him. So That was really something that once he was on board, we were really off to the races. He's just been a pleasure to work with, and really, I think, adds so much to his voice.
Yeah. Now, besides just the assignment, like, how involved is he as the executive producer?
He's very involved. I mean, we talked to him about sort of how he wanted to lay out the arc of the season and some of the themes that we're trying to get across. And then obviously, after the podcast, he remains very involved in it with promoting promoting the podcast and sort of figuring out how to get it to as many people as we can.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've been involved in podcasting since 2005, actually before I think was even a term. But what do you make of the rise of podcasts? They become so popular over the last few years. Well, why do you think that is?
I think there's probably a lot of reasons. One of which is that people, I think, it's interesting because it's a throwback to old time radio, like you say, in a way, 1930s form of storytelling that we're trying to, reimagine now and reconceive. And I think there's something about that that's appealing to people who are, inundated with social media, whether it's Twitter or Instagram, Facebook, just the constant kind of, a collective feeling that you need to be plugged in and that everything is instantaneous and that, the news of the day happens so quickly and everyone is so plugged in that there's something nice about a podcast, which is a bit more of a, slow burn form of storytelling. And then I think, people, obviously, people still drive cars and people still go to the gym and walk the dog and do all the things that I think are very conducive to listening to a podcast. The good thing about it, one of the great things about it is that you don't have to have, you don't have to be sitting there staring at a screen. You can be going about your life and listening to a podcast at the same time. So that's an appealing aspect of it, but also a challenge from a creative perspective because you need to really get people's attention. When someone is listening to your podcast and also doing something else with their day, that becomes a much tougher task. So we really tried to figure, how to balance that approach as best as we could, knowing that we weren't always going to have everyone's full attention when you're driving or you're out and about. But it's really something that I think increasingly more and more people are going to look to make these fictional podcasts. I mean, there's several of them that are out that are great, but I think we're just scratching the surface of it now, and it's been fun to try to figure it out on the fly.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mentioned the old time radio, but that had like kind of a hammy performance to those and the creaky doors and stuff. This has really high production value. How long does it take to create an episode?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, we really put a premium on trying to make it sound as great as we could, and our music and engineering teams have really done a terrific job and continue to work around the clock. In fact, on this. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a piecemeal approach. I mean, we first of all, I had the conceptualizing what the show would be, which was sort of in my own head, and wrote the pilot episode myself. Then we had a sort of mini writer's room with two other writers, Nina Baker and Katrina Albright, and a writer's assistant, Kevin Handy, and me. So the four of us would be in a room together conceptualizing how we saw the season arcing out. And so that was a couple months of being in the writer's room and writing the other episodes and editing them down and figuring out exactly how we're going to approach the arc of the season. And then we have, the casting process, which lasted a couple of weeks, and recording, is probably the shortest element of it, of all. We really had about 3 days of recording. And then the post-production part, I would say, is the most labor intensive. I mean, that's really, as I say, it's still ongoing right at the moment. And, that is something that we really wanted to get right. And I think, by virtue of the medium, it's what, you really have to put the most time and effort into.
Mm-hmm. So you said a season. So are there plans to do another season, or is it too early to say?
It's too early to say. We definitely want to, keep. The idea is to keep going with it for sure. But to be honest, we haven't had in-depth conversations about that yet because we're still in the middle of it. We just put out our fourth episode, and we've got 4 more to go. And we're still working on finishing up those last 4 from a post-production standpoint. So once we finish up with that, we will start thinking ahead. But we definitely hope to keep it going.
Mm-hmm. And it's out from Endeavor Audio. And where's the best way to follow Blackout? To find out what's going on, new episodes and everything.
Well, you can basically listen to it wherever you get your podcast. So on iTunes or on I know Google Podcasts is something that people are increasingly using. And you can go to endeavoraudio.com, and I believe they are up there as well. So wherever you get all your podcasts, you can hear it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you talking to me. I really dig it. I really dig Blackout.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate that, and thanks for all the feedback and great questions. And I hope people are enjoying it.
Thanks. All right. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Hey, this is Spencer Gray, writer and director of Snake with a Human Tail, and when I want to listen to a kick-ass show, I listen to Without Your Head.
Perfect.